Thank you. Okay, good morning. This is the OregonServes Executive Committee meeting for March 7th, 2025. Um, with respect to quorum, how are we with quorum? We don't have quorum because we don't have enough people here.
Well, if you have two of the three,
Two
you
of
do.
the three. Yes. Okay. So we're okay.
Yeah.
That's good. And there may not be much that needs a vote or moving forward anyway. So we're all good. I want to welcome everyone and I see we have a guest, Lorena Warnock. Thank you for joining us. This is just a subgroup, a small group, our executive committee for the Oregon Serves Commission, and we're happy to have you here today. And wanted to ask Kelly, did we receive any public comment requests?
We did not.
Okay. All right. So we're going to move along in our agenda. And next up, we have a report out from our director, Carrie Bauer. And I know you have some bit of laryngitis, so please be kind to yourself in your report out here.
Thanks. Just one second. Well, I'm moving a few things around on my screen, so I
No
can.
worries.
Okay, there we are.
Morning, Daniel.
Oh, hey. Um, okay, here we are. All right, so first, just wanted to get into legislative updates. There are altogether 6 bills that could impact OregonServes. I almost just said Oregon volunteers.
Okay, we know what you're talking about.
I've never done that. I don't
Years,
know what
Carrie.
happened. I don't know where that just came from. That's been so long. There are 6 bills technically that could impact OregonServes. None of these are our bills. And obviously because of that, that then means that there's limitations as to how we engage or interact with them. Commission members, programs, grantees, partners, alumni, anyone else but me and staff can interact with these but because they're not part of what was the bills that we put forth or part of the approved governor's budget, they are there are limitations and restrictions that go into place. Commission members may interact with these or engage with these. They do need to follow guidelines around not doing that as a commission member themselves, but as a community member whose opinions may be formed through their service on the Oregon Serves Commission. And that includes reaching out, doing outreach, doing education, attending town halls or whatnot. So that's my plug in on my plug on understanding the context around things here. None of them have had a hearing beyond their first reading. Out of all of the bills, and I think there was something like 2,500 automatic, that were like introduced at the start of session. But out of all the bills that the HAC and Oregon for Workforce Investment and Oregon Serves and so forth are tracking, which is altogether um, something around, looking at my sheet right now, um, around 160. Probably 2/3 haven't had hearings. So that's basically kind of how it's going in the legislative session this year. There was a lot of bills. There's only so much time, and it's there's a lot of competition, I guess you could say, for this. And so those bills that are out there for us include, I would say, 5 of those bills are around emergency response. They are bills that are related, reminiscent, kind of building on um, the work that was done out of the Legislative Authority Disaster Task Force a couple of years ago, where we had done a lot of work that was oversaw by um, Rep Evans. We had done all the work in developing a lot of concepts and policy and requests and ideas and whatnot around supporting and enhancing and expanding the emergency response network within Oregon. So that while I led the subcommittee on volunteerism with Rep Gomberg, some of the other subcommittees were around supporting and expanding the the COAD and VOAD networks or increasing capacity of the Oregon Department of Emergency Management. So this was not strictly volunteerism or national service, but we did have that voice there through me serving on that. So some of these bills are kind of reminiscent of some of that work that we did that really didn't necessarily end up going anywhere at the time because we had a new governor in place right afterwards. And for that session in particular, there was a directive to really tighten the request and there was a real limitation on kind of what could go forward and what was going to get improved. And so strategically, the move was made by many people above me to say, this isn't going to go through, this isn't the right time. But we're seeing some of these kind of come back in again, and most of them do have to do with seeing a volunteer emergency response volunteer registration database be implemented enterprise wide at the state level, which was again part of that work before. As you know, we already have the one system, Orvid, and so a lot of these bills are supporting either them adopting Orvid or bringing Orvid in and kind of building off of it, or supporting the medical database that Oregon Health Authority runs and seeing those get combined and communicate and talk to each other, or some other kind of related work being done where OregonServes would maybe be included as part of a development work group to see, inform uh, ODM or whatnot. So they're all sort of related to that. None of them are around really keeping Orvid at OregonServes, which we support because we don't have the capacity for that. But we do have a role in emergency response for developing and communicating resources for spontaneous volunteers, which is why Orvid existed, and for also deploying national service. So our stance and my analysis of all of those bills has been that we would support, the good work that's been done so far to not be wasted, to be adopted enterprise level, and that we certainly do want to be part of that conversation, that we still do have a place there, and we want to support that work. We think that that's important to happen at ODM as opposed to us too, because we don't have the authority to ask all the volunteer managers for all the sections of the emergency response plan for the state of Oregon that exists at ODM to do these things. And so we do think that that is the right entity to coordinate that wholly. So we're not sure where that's going to go because of the fact that none of those have actually had hearings. If they don't have hearings, then we'll obviously be talking about Plan B because one of the issues that is the case also for OregonServes is that some of our staffing is not going to continue past this next fiscal year because it's bolstered by ARPA funds, which are ending and expiring. And so we'll then just look at some other options, but it'd be really great to see some of these bills go through. Um, or something go through that does maintain these systems and these really important resources that a lot of community volunteer managers need, that a lot of county volunteer managers need, and then we know that the state needs. And so that's what's currently going on. We just received another bill to analyze that was just introduced for the around kind of what these other four bills mentioned, that Rep Evans had drafted, that is again talking about an enterprise level database. So I will again, put my 2 cents in for reminding that, that these things are existing and that resource could be a part of that. The other bill that is out there that would, if people, I did let programs and grantees and partners know about these, by the way. But another bill that's out there that's very interesting that would impact us, but unfortunately has not had a hearing, is HB 2399. I did do the analysis and submit that on that one. That is a bill that would provide after service award to people who serve in the National Guard, AmeriCorps, Peace Corps, and I think there's another entity. I don't think it was General Military Service, but maybe it was. There's no definition or parameters necessarily on what that award looks like or any of the criteria. So I did provide that analysis as my job as legislative contact for all of this at OE. We all have assignments for that. Um, and kind of mention some of the ways that, that bill could be improved or amended and let, just internal people at Heck know how that would impact us. As I said, it has not been heard. Um, Officially, the deadline for, I think, any introductions of bills and hearings for bills is March 21st. So we'll be keeping an eye on that date. Um, and
Carrie,
yes,
I'm sorry to interrupt. Can I ask who would hear that specific bill? Do you know what committee that would go through?
yep, I've got the spreadsheet pulled up. Hold on. Let me get to the top of it because I scrolled all the way
No
down
worries, no
to
worries.
count the bills. Where was this? So that's 23.99, right? 23.99. Let me just get to that entry. This would direct the Oregon Department of Administrative Services to establish a program to provide one-time grants to individuals who agree to serve in a uniform service or a public service program and complete the basic or initial training for that program, which just means like complete that program. Um, AmeriCorps members, again, as I said, would be eligible. They're specifically listed. And it was referred to the Emergency Management, General Government, and Veterans with subsequent referral then to Ways and Means.
Okay.
That
Okay.
was on January 17th. The first reading of it, just, that
Yeah.
general first reading, it's just admin, was on January 13th. And so, yeah, we just got an update on the spreadsheet from Clay today, and I don't see that that's scheduled for a hearing.
Okay.
Um, the other one that, in addition to that,
Did Evans sponsor that one or who?
yes.
Okay.
My apologies. One second. I need to look something up really quick that
You said yes, Evans. My
yes.
the it says Lewis, Tate, Owens, and Levy.
Okay. I can
I
look
think
it
he
up.
but he maybe introed it and then maybe there's more sponsors. I'm not
Yeah.
sure. I'd have to look at that, but I could have sworn that was actually Evans. For 23.99. Hmm. I guess it doesn't really matter. Another one that I think is really interesting, and it was something that I made sure to let people know existed for their own educational purposes and whatnot, was HB 2655. This is one that is actually, and I'm not sure if it's had a hearing or not. That's not, he did, it's not on my. This is one that would be a pilot program through Oregon Housing and Community Services, and it would provide financial incentive for people who take jobs in hard to hire areas of Oregon. So typically, like Eastern Oregon, Southern Oregon, Coastal Oregon. Um, and it seems to me that that would be great for organizations placing AmeriCorps members in those communities to be an eligible entity. But again, this is not a bill that I'm able to interact with, but I think it's a good one for people to know about. And
So sorry to be clear, Carrie, it's an incentive for like location based hard to hire rather than sectors or industries hard to hire. Okay.
yeah, so the summary of it is it requires it's relating to a strategic housing stipend pilot program. This is just something I came across. It wasn't one that we're named in, or we're not considered an eligible entity, or I guess like the nonprofits and whatnot. Requires the Housing and Community Services Department to develop a housing stipend pilot program to provide housing stipends to individuals to move to a city where their labor is expected to benefit economic development of the city. Which sounds a lot like what AmeriCorps does.
Fascinating. Yeah. And is there, sorry, this is probably neither here nor there, but where is that money expected to come from?
Well,
From the general
from
fund,
yeah, I
Okay.
mean, it would come, yeah, from that. And so this was also drafted by Rep. Evans.
Evans.
The first reading was January 13th, and it was referred to Housing and Homelessness January 17th. There are currently no meetings scheduled on that. And so again, this is one that if people would like to do more education around improvement of that exists. But again, I leave that up to others. Um, but I think it'd be interesting to know what the eligibility criteria is for this so far. But again, as I said, a lot of things aren't getting hearings. If they are going to have hearings, they're probably going to have to find out or hear from people that people want these things to happen. Um, and the deadlines coming up for that is that the deadline to have a public hearing and schedule a work session is March 24th, first, or the bill goes away. So that is my legislative updates right there. Like kind of a little bit of a hodgepodge of what's going on, but I'm also getting caught up from having been out in DC as well, and I'm going to segue into that. Um, so, and Daniel, you're here, right? Sorry, I don't have my full screen open because I'm looking at my documents. Oh, okay. Hey, good to see you again. Long time. Yeah, didn't see you there. So, just really quick on kind of federal updates, and then I think we wanted to provide time for Daniel and I to give a recap on the leadership convening, which I'll let Daniel go first. But just as far as federal updates, obviously, what we're really concerned about is March 14th. That's forever just going to be like an ominous day now, that date, right? It's like a potential for a federal government shutdown. We obviously hope to see a continuing resolution. Don't know what that's going to look like right now, but that could have a large impact, obviously. We have fiscal year 24 funds. We, as far as I understand it, are able to draw those down and reimburse programs that are asking us for funds. However, that would greatly impact any processes that would be in place because the federal staff will not be working. So we wouldn't have access to federal staff. It would delay the grant making process for fiscal year 25 because um, they're not going to be working on that stuff. That is all, some of the things that would be really concerned about. Obviously, it could greatly impact what we would see with the fiscal year 25 funding. But I'm not, we're obviously concerned about that and not wanting to see that happen and don't have necessarily any kind of information to really share on that. We heard a lot of different like hopes and possible scenarios while we were in DC, but things change on a daily basis. Ideally, to see just even another continuing resolution flat funding would be fantastic. um, and just keep it at CSL. um, the the other things that I think are worth mentioning as far as kind of what is happening federally is that AmeriCorps, as other federal agencies, are seeing reduction in force. They have seen that some staff have been let go, and they, as well as other agencies, do have a deadline next week to provide their reduction in force RIF and reorganization plan to the Trump administration. Um, so obviously that could have an impact, again, on operations and how things may go and not go so smoothly. Further, uh, what do I want to say about this? So there's a lot happening with the executive orders. As I previously mentioned in our last executive committee hearing, we had received primarily just general directives from AmeriCorps stating to be compliant with the four main executive orders that they feel affect us, which are sorry, I'm going to pull up the minutes where I wrote that in there because I can't always remember the name. The Unleashing American Energy. This one in particular was ceasing American Climate Corps, which was an AmeriCorps initiative. Generally, for us, most of our programs, what qualified as an ACC program to advertise on the ACC website was an existing and approved environmental stewardship position. So that one isn't a big risk for us. Then there was no funding behind that initiative. Ending illegal discrimination and restoring merit-based opportunity. Ending radical and wasteful government DEI programs and preferencing, and defending women from gender ideology extremism and restoring biological truth to the federal government. Two of those executive orders, the last two that I just mentioned, are part of federal lawsuits. Two lawsuits that are in existence that Oregon is one of the 14 states named in those lawsuits. One is headed by New Mexico and the other one by Rhode Island. The other two, the first two I mentioned are not part of those lawsuits, and therefore have not had any injunction placed on them. Um, the Defending Women and the Ending Radical Wasteful Government DEI, a federal judge did rule that federal agencies may not ask anyone to self-certify to anything related to that, and may not cease funding related to that. May not ask for compliance and make a compliance judgment and cease funding. Um, and so the day that we had our last executive committee meeting, we received specific directives from AmeriCorps to review our grant applications and our existing grant awards, I should say, the applications behind those awards, um, and let them know what we thought. Do we think we comply with these? Um, and if so, self-certify that we comply. If not, change things or relinquish the funding. Um, understand that. So as I explained, once we received any specific directives, up until that moment, we were just I was informing factually to grantees what was happening. I was not, and made very clear that I would not be explaining any more beyond what AmeriCorps was telling us, because for me to interpret what they mean by terminate any activities that don't meet compliance of EOs is me defining compliance, is me defining the implications and requirements of an executive order and other things that would constitute me giving legal advice. And so we explained to our grantees that we would not be requesting any actions because we don't know what the actions are. We don't know anything beyond this general statement. And again, we would not want to interpret, give legal advice, tell someone to overcomply, or have any sort of liability related to that. Um, Responsibility or liability related to that. So when we received the directives, the specific directives from AmeriCorps, as we informed them and as I informed you and as I was informed to do by leadership, that immediately went to to my boss, to the head of HEC, and to the Oregon Department of Justice. From there, this has been led by legal counsel, um, our actions and how we have handled this. Um, because of the injunctions we have been directed by Governor's Office Legal Counsel and the Department of Justice to inform that we don't believe that actions can be taken on two of those EOs. Right now, we are um, working with legal counsel to get the allowable response to the other EOs. And we have the end of the day today to submit that to AmeriCorps before we are placed on a list of being non-responsive. And so I will just share that AmeriCorps does believe that they continue to have allowability to ask for these directives to be in place, though they do understand that they can't take money away based on those two. Um, the general stance of the state and whatnot is that using certain words like clean energy and things like that are not illegal, and that all of the activities, and we stand by this, we reviewed this, all the activities being completed by our grantees are in compliance to allowable and legal laws that relate to these topics in these EOs. Um, Therefore, we believe that they are allowable activities and essentially and generally AmeriCorps itself believes that people are doing allowable activities, that but they do need to have some sort of response so that they are not no one's becoming a target or being having unfair scrutiny. But there's a lot going on between legal teams because of all of this. And so I am only saying what I feel like I can say, and I'm not making any promises, and I'm not going into further greater detail, because I think that that is not my place to speak on certain things beyond kind of what I'm saying. But there's just been a lot going on, I'll share, and there's just a lot of concerns. And we're just doing our best to communicate. And we think that, yeah, that our programs are doing really great work out there. Yes, Sierra.
Beyond, I assume, funding freezes, what are the repercussions of us getting added to that list of non-compliant agencies or whatever terminology you used?
I don't know this for a fact, but we were given three. Okay, well, I won't go into that. I don't know this for a fact, but I recall that uh, when the first executive orders came out, there were some memos attached. Uh, And even though like that funding freeze and other things like that were like dealt with very quickly, there were memos that came with them that very specifically had mentioned some March dates where all agencies were supposed to submit a report to, it was either the OMP or the OMB, so that B is budget, P is personnel, for those that I don't know. On like that they had done reviews that people were compliant or non-responsive, da 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 da. So my guess is it's related to that. I would think that that's what that is for, is that that process that probably everybody by now has kind of like forgot about because so much has happened since then, that way back when that first executive order came out, that memo mentioned there was some sort of internal memo that was publicized that mentioned like a date for all agencies to report this. And so I'd assume that it's related to that. Obviously, like, I mean, AmeriCorps is doing really great things and always has. And um, but everybody's at risk with funding for this upcoming budget reconciliation. And so, of course, there's the optics are a concern there. I would understand. Um, and so, we have sent this back to legal and we're waiting for some information to receive so that we may meet this deadline in the way that we are legally allowed to meet this deadline. Um, I will also share that AmeriCorps is the first out of the gate on this. And so because of the fact that, that's involved in Oregon is involved in different things. And because we know that our state has an ethos around, these things and has an intent, response, we are at we serve at the pleasure of the governor. So, we take directions on how to handle these things with a lot of things in mind. What the governor is asking, the governor's plan is, and obviously us communicating, you know, our concerns about any risks by any stances taken that, could be damaging to our programs. But I don't think anybody wants to see that happen or has a plan to let that happen. So, um, but things are changing every day. But that is basically the current landscape on kind of what's happening. I wanted to give you all of that context because when we talk about the agenda for the 14th, that's going to be really important. Because one of the directives that you had shared to me last meeting was to ask grantees and whatnot for invited testimony. So I do have a plan for that and have some info to share with you about that later. But on the agenda, I guess we probably will end up using the water. I talk too much, even with laryngitis apparently. But it's important stuff. But yeah, I think that that's good to know all of that so that when we kind of get into like that piece, you'll have an idea of kind of where we're at with things. So I'll leave it at that for now. Um,
So, and looking at time, I want to make sure that we've got enough time. Daniel, do you want to, because you and Carrie went on the DC visit, any things to add around that visit and what we're hearing from our congressional delegates there?
Um,
we had
uh,
a lot of fun.
had a lot of fun. It was the first time Carrie and I have ever met in person after like
Oh,
4 or 5 years of
Oh my
knowing.
gosh,
For like 5 years.
that's
He had said to me
wild.
before we went, he's like, yes, we have. And I'm like, I am pretty sure we actually have.
But we got to hang out a lot and got to know each other a lot, which was really great. Because I think it just made us a better team, especially getting to know like Miranda as well. I'm like on the staff side, and we were a pretty balanced like delegation, because we had staff, but also like technical staff, executive director staff, and then a commissioner. And not every state sent that type of like group makeup. So it was really good that we were all balanced. And the only thing that I could add with my commissioner hat on is on the congressional delegation side, they are defeated. And so that was really like a bummer to hear. When we met with the Bonamici staff, she straight up like told us, the staffer was like, we hear you, we support you, but like we have no control over like the budget or like what's happening, and we just like want to let you know that. But like
Mm.
we will try. But it was really like disheartening to like hear that. And then um so there were other commissioners in attendance. There wasn't a lot of us, but there was some commissioners, and I appreciated that one of the commissioners asked at some point, I don't remember who was the one presenting, but they asked, like, as commission members, what can we do? Because there's a lot that EDs are doing with the actual logistics, getting like programs in compliance and making sure legals, like that's all them, right? I was like, that's Carrie, that's your job. And so someone asked as a commissioner, like, what can we do? And this is what I'm gonna probably share with the rest of the commission staff, like commissioners on our board. But this is the time where we get to control the narrative that is being told about us at AmeriCorps and in Oregon, like with OregonServes. And so as commissioners, what we can do is continue to uplift positive stories of what AmeriCorps is doing in our own communities. So that way we're not just a number on a budget bill. We can amplify and say what you are cutting is an AmeriCorps member who is feeding a rural community through a food pantry program, right? But kind of fighting that, not even fighting, but like uplifting, like what we can do is uplift the good work that we are doing. And that's not like going in defiance against anyone or anything like that. All we're just going to do is continue to do the good work that we are doing, but also letting other folks know that that's the good work that we're doing. And so we can kind of take it individually and kind of like ask commissioners, say, like, do you even know all of the AmeriCorps programs that are in your area? If not, let's take it upon ourselves to do some homework and learn about every single AmeriCorps program that's in your community. Meet with some of those program directors and introduce yourself as a commission member. Amplify them in some of the platforms that they have, some of the platforms that we have, through our newsletter, through our socials. Um, and then just like whenever you get a chance in your professional world, like mentioning AmeriCorps when able. And so that's the biggest takeaway that I got, is that now more than ever, we should just talk about the good work that AmeriCorps is doing, because it's going to be really important to humanize the type of work that we do and how bipartisan it is and how needed it is. Right? We have some AmeriCorps members, like they're the only person rounding up volunteers or doing X, Y, and Z in like a rural community. And without them, there's nothing. There's literally nothing. So that's the biggest takeaway, other than it was fun. And the AmeriCorps, like America's Service Commission bunch, is just, they're really fun, and can sing. And I think we should do karaoke at the state level because it's a really great bonding activity.
That's great. Well, and Daniel, I mean, sort of jumping ahead in our agenda, like, let's definitely have you share that experience. And those recommendations are great. I mean, I don't know all of the AmeriCorps activities, and I've been doing this a long time, like
Mhm.
how we can do that. And I love what you said, lift up the work that's being done, and by cutting those funds, this is what we're cutting. I think that's
Mhm.
really important.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I wanted to share really quick on that note too that AmeriCorps Week is next week. So big chance for us to really highlight what programs are doing. Kelly already will be implementing a plan for us to utilize all of the tools that AmeriCorps has put together for some like real, themed blitzes of social media highlights every day of the week next week. I'm actually waiting on some staff or contact info from Tyler from Ask so that I can send out some things I did get from government relations, AmeriCorps, to send out to public officials so that they can also do some social media blasts of support during that week. Also going to be including notice of some of these things we're doing where we're going to have the invited testimony if a staffer wants to listen in to that board, to that commission meeting, or also, sending out some invites for their site visits. We know that Congresswoman Dexter is actually interested in April to come and visit Confluence and College Possible. So talking to them about that, and just really, yeah, I think that this is just perfect time to be able, as Daniel said, to really like mention um, all the impacts and some other stuff that I'm going to include both in next week's meeting materials, but also sending out is the updated data that I've compiled around the education awards and what's being put back into Oregon universities and colleges from
Mhm.
AmeriCorps members. So a lot of great stuff as well as some program highlights. to lean into. And I would also just quickly say, and I see, I'll hand it off to Daniel again. One of the things that was really interesting to hear from AmeriCorps is just some of the things that they're like thinking, or from Ask, that they're thinking ahead to. Um,
Mhm.
which is, looking at maybe additional like private funding that they could raise in the event that there is some need there for commission admin, if any funding is lost there. There's a big concern that, if some funding was lost there, that in a lot of places, if those commissions aren't state funded, because there are nonprofit ones and so forth, that they may not exist and they'd be really hard to bring back, um, in the future in a different funding landscape. So we're doing a lot of work there. AmeriCorps leadership did come and talk to us on 2 different days. And the other quick thing I just mentioned is that I think they really heard us as a network when we said, beyond all these things we're always telling you, there's even more ways that we could help you reduce the admin, like the duplications and the silos and the repetition and things that are happening in this grant making process or management process. Like, all there's so much more red tape that could be removed. Let us help you with that. um, because especially if they're looking at a reduction in force, it's, their capacity is going to be greatly limited. And so how do we make sure that members are still getting their stipends, programs are still happening, community members are still getting served, staff are still getting paid, that these programs are still happening and flowing with the least amount of, negative impact possible. And then we have a lot of ideas and definitely want, as a network, really want, to offer up our partnership to help, um, you know, reduce any baggage or red tape or bureaucracy we can, that would make this a leaner, even more efficient process. So Daniel, your turn.
Daniel.
Oh, I was just gonna add, I don't know how feasible it would be, but if it's easy enough to do, for AmeriCorps Week, I would love to see an AmeriCorps member to take over our social media and like do a like day with an AmeriCorps member. So like they just post on our Instagram stories or something like what it looks like to serve as an Oregon AmeriCorps member. That's often used when there's like weeks, but um, don't know how much red tape you're gonna have to go through to be able to do that. But if not this year, maybe next year. But I know that that's a really simple way for members to also feel really engaged. Is that there's some people that like are going to be jumping up and down to like volunteer to do that, but it's like a day, like come with me for like in a day of like an AmeriCorps member, and it's really engaging. And it actually, that's the type of things that like I would have liked to have seen when I was signing up to be an AmeriCorps member, but to be like, what does it look like to like in a typical day to be an AmeriCorps member? And I think it'll also speak to the mission that I was speaking about, where part of their day is also like existing out in the communities that they like live in, right? They're gonna show like what areas they visit, what areas they go get a lunch at. Like they are a part of the community in the broader sense, but just an idea there. And then I just wanted to echo your sentiments that I didn't mention that we met with the AmeriCorps agency, but it sounds like they are smart people. But like, yes, there's a lot just like up in the air. But I love the response that the service commissions gave, which was, we're in it together and let's do it together. And we know that you all are like binded to, you work for the federal government, we do not, but we're all in this world together, so like let's work together. And so that was the big takeaway that I got as a commission member, who like learned a lot about the administrative side of AmeriCorps, because some of the things that could be fixed, right, I was like, I had no idea that that was a problem. Like background checks, y'all, like there's a whole, like there's a lot of drama there. I learned a lot. But just wanted to uplift that. And then yes, echo the other piece as well, where I was reassured to hear from Kyra from Ask, saying that their commitment is to continue AmeriCorps, whatever that may look like at the commission level. And if that needs like admin support, they can't promise that each commission can continue running at the same level that it can, but they are committed to helping fill in those gaps through like the philanthropic like sector, like engaging like private foundations, et cetera, to like gap fill money so that admin support can continue across the nation and we don't lose the momentum that we have at the current level that we have. We might have to do bare bone like commissions for a while if needed, but I'm happy to hear that they said that they're stepping up to that plate and that they've already started some of these conversations. They started building relationships with a lot of foundations, and they're kind of pilot testing some initiatives like some of the youth initiatives, some of the like task force that they are launching. It's in partnership with like a foundation, and it's something that they want to keep exploring further as they diversify their portfolio of funding streams with America's Service Commissions.
May I just jump in here? Want to take a look at time real quick, but I know Sierra, you have to jump off for another meeting.
I
Anything
do.
you need to want to add before you have to go?
Just thank you all. Appreciate the commitment to this work. And I'll look forward to seeing the emails with the notes afterwards. Have a great weekend, everybody. Sorry to hop off early.
Thank you,
Bye.
All right,
Sierra.
have a great weekend, Sarah. Um, yeah, one quick thing I'll say is news to share that Dan, I love your idea about an AmeriCorps member. I don't know how much we'd be able to accomplish that this week, but we certainly don't have to stop this week, this next week doing things like that. We keep the momentum going. We say, have a hook of uh, you know, last week you heard about this week we're doing that. It doesn't have to just be AmeriCorps week that we're doing things like that. And we actually have Memory Fox and other tools that we have promoted and can bring up again with programs where they can actually like record themselves and send them in to us. A lot of really cool stuff. One thing I do want to provide notice to about is that we no longer have an outreach and training officer position at OregonServes, and we will not have that position for a while. Beyond me, we only have legislative authority for two positions, so two budgeted positions. The outreach and training person and Madeline's position, the program officer. The emergency services and fiscal compliance officer were supported as limited duration positions by ARPA.
ARPA.
We expect, and we very much need to keep this compliance position and have less options for it than, what the other position maybe could get some more funding through, like within OE or have, be able to cover some other work. And so they are looking into changing the PA2 program analyst 2 that we have as the outreach position into the position for the compliance officer position, which means we are going to have to likely utilize some funding, like contracting funding or other things to have some of that outreach work covered. It's a required position. And so we're getting creative with this. But again, this is, we've been at the HEC 8 years and we're still really trying to get the budget authority for these needed positions. So we've somehow got to break that barrier somehow to get this in the budget, but it hasn't happened so far. So right now, Kelly is actually covering some of the communication stuff, and I'm actually covering some of the communication stuff. Which is why the newsletter is a little late this month, but I swear it's coming out. Executive orders have taken over my life, but that is a capacity issue for us, unfortunately, and it's just something that's going to continue to just try. We're going to need a solution for it. This is like um it's been kind of a roller coaster with our capacity, and so that continues to be an issue, but we're really definitely gonna do everything we can and utilize every resource we can during this time right now, so where it's so important, so we're really looking at cutting some things that aren't that great as far as the return on our time and really, really focusing on things with bigger impact. So we might not do some things that we typically did because it just didn't get a lot of return and we want to maximize exposure. So we'll keep you posted on those things. And if I can transition a little bit into then next week's agenda and some of the stuff I'm doing with that. Since it is 11:16, if it's okay, Heidi, can I do
Yeah.
that? Okay.
Please do.
So let me share. It says sharing is not turned on, so I hit send request. Is that you, Kelly, that maybe needs to do that, or?
Yeah, I just hit allow.
Okay. So let me try again. I think you're seeing my whole desktop. I don't know. If you're seeing yourselves, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. We see the agenda.
You see the agenda? Oh,
Well,
okay, yeah,
what
yeah.
you're working on for
Okay, great.
employee.
That's right. Okay. So this would be based on what we talked about. Um, we have we talked about inviting programs to come and speak. There's a little bit about keeping that as like a general thing, but also like what if we had them come and like just share kind of what's going on with them, right? So I wanted to see what you thought about leaning into that a little bit more. In order to make time for that, because we have 9 grantees and 5 planning grantees, I think it's worth hearing from a planning grantee. The general bulk of it is our 9 funded grantees. Probably not all could come. But if we had even 10 people come and gave them 3 minutes, 4 minutes, that's 40 minutes. Um, so that is a bulk, but what we could do is set that up as invited public comment testimony, which is a good structure because it has time limit. It
Yeah.
also provides support for you all with the boundaries that you would need to set, which is that you can't really speak to certain legal things. You can't give legal advice. This is not promising anything with future grant making. This is not, they need to be careful with like that they're not lobbying if they can't, that you can't, speak to certain things and so forth. And it would really be able to make sure that stays within this really specific structure that these types of things are for. So, what I would do is put that invite out there, ask them to give me notice if they're going to attend by next Wednesday, so that I can do any pivoting I would need to do. I also am making time for asking Carrie to give 3 or 4 minutes update on the landscape of the seniors programs right now in the state. And then, as we discussed, ask Greg Carpaniello, who's our national direct representative, to also speak out about kind of what's happening in their world. So if we did that, if we did all of this, if I made my director report a consent agenda item and really express to people to very, very, very much read it, and I will try to make it as like compact and readable as possible. In that report, I would mention the site visit coordination, what's going on with AmeriCorps Week. It'll be the end, but still we'll talk about what we did. Any legislative session updates, any federal appropriation, any executive order stuff. I'll be able to talk about State Policy Academy that we're in, the NGA, Service and Career Pathway Policy Academy grant that we received. I will talk about the Youth Mental Health Corps grant that we applied for, which also would potentially have some funding for a contracted outreach position, as well as just a recap on kind of what is happening with State Plan Civic Health Index. So I put that in the consent agenda and really make sure that they read that, because also that's going to have some stuff around executive orders that they really need to read. People really need to understand before we go into the rest of this. We would have 15 minutes for the leadership convening report out. I would probably leave most of that to Daniel. I'll keep my mouth shut. Hopefully, I still won't have laryngitis then, though. Then that would provide 40 minutes for invited testimony. I think it's important to put this in that time range for accessibility, but also so that people aren't sitting and waiting through that. And so that conversations aren't happening, that should probably be informed by what people are hearing. Then you would just leave around 15 minutes for just commission discussion, which is, I think the discussion, a lot of side it ends up then happening in probably future public meetings with like getting public policy scheduled the next executive one, and then closing the meeting because the time is 11 to 12:30. Um, if we need to, if we had too many people, we would have to just probably shorten that down a little bit, or just say, hey, we only have so much time, or I guess we'd have to figure that out.
And just one thought, and I love this, and consent agenda is a great way to manage some of this. If we found like one idea would be for within our next meeting, like to give them two options. We have a commission meeting this date or this date. We invite you, and which date works for you. Just an idea.
When is our next? So you can also take this kind of like Tasmania at executive committee. So would you want to say that for a full commission meeting? Because it is nice whenever all the commissions are on there, or
Right.
executive. If everybody took the Kelly, when is the next full commission meeting?
One moment, please.
And as she's doing that, this is the invite that I have up on the screen. That would go out after this meeting if you're okay with
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
The May 9th.
Oh, that's pretty far out there.
Yeah, it is far out there. So
We could always, if I could check back in with you next week that if a lot of people said I really want to do that, but I can't make that date, or everybody responds, we can hold a special meeting.
sure, sure. Yeah. And
We could
I
do
would,
that.
yeah. And I think that's a great idea. Like for as many to attend and speak as possible, but if we have another date,
Yeah.
and maybe we end up coming up with something in the future.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's why I wanted people to let me know by like Wednesday so I would know. Because especially if like I can't get hardly anybody, then like I need to come up, we need some new agenda items. But I think we have plenty to talk
We
about.
have plenty. Well,
They're
and
probably gonna be all this again, but
thank you
this
for
is just
including all the details. Like this is just for us to listen. I think it needs to be made very clear to us on the commissioners. Like we cannot make any promises, commitments, future. Like we are there to listen
Mhm.
and really not even respond. Correct.
And that is supported by it being within the public comment
Right.
period.
Right. Exactly. So no, this is I don't know how you feel, Daniel, but I feel good about this.
And that's just a little bit more of, and tell me if you would want me to change that, but of the focus area being like, what would any potential future funding cuts, affect you? Like, how are your members doing? And like, what's happening there, effects of the shutdown, impact of orders, and essentially, again, just asserting it so that you have an idea what's going on.
That'd be great.
Is that okay? Do you want it to be different?
I think this is sufficient. And I think the other piece of that, I mean, obviously in the future, we can, as we have in the past, invite others to come and give more in depth. But it's sort of the immediacy of what we're experiencing at the federal level that we need to hear about. I think this will also be good to inform us regarding those talking points. Like,
Hmm.
what are members feeling? What are they doing? But what's going on right now? And what are the risks that we have? Yeah,
Absolutely. And that is your commission role. I'm not received any pushback on this, but I mean, that is your role to be able to listen and to know and to lift those voices. And I think that this is like the most impactful, effective way to be able to do this, but also taking into consideration like limitations, the overarching kind of legal stuff going on and this and that. Um, this is the draft that I have currently to send out. That I can send out like to say to like the Oregon staffers or whatnot, of public officials. I'm sort of still waffling on sort of like where I think that could go, but I was considering sending this out to the staffers of the Congress people that we met as part of my thank you and acknowledgement of meeting with us, as well as to those we didn't get to meet. Sorry, we missed you. Blah, blah, blah. Here's another opportunity to hear from your local constituents on these issues. We're not advocating this or that. We're not making an ask. This is just an opportunity for you to listen, da 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 da, if you would like to attend.
I love it. I think it's a great idea.
All right, that's that.
And it reads well.
Um, thank you. Um, yeah, that's so we will move forward. I will move forward with that agenda and start making those um invites. Again, apologies I was not able to get some of the other meetings scheduled in the meantime that I had hoped to do since the last executive committee meeting, but the executive order stuff has really been dominant for our time. So, and it has been a huge
And
priority.
it's important for commissioners to hear that. Like everything, the world has been sort of turned upside down overnight.
Yeah.
And this is where the efforts go when we're faced with this. Um, okay. Anything else on our agenda? So we feel good about the agenda for next week. Um, I don't have any special directives or next steps. I mean, I guess next step is Carrie, you're gonna send out the emails to the folks, gather that. Um, I will just also note if there's anything, I'm going to DC for another work related, not PCC, but an organization I belong to. If there's anything you want me to take and leave with our folks, whether it's the staffers or et cetera, like I can leave that on the side. Like this is another hat that I wear. Like if things roll around, I'm gonna be there on April Fool's Day.
Ah.
So just FYI, like if there's anything you want me to take and give, like I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, and I might actually have some of our new like leave behinds ready by then, you know.
Okay. Okay. Just let me
And
know.
don't forget your little OregonServes pin.
Oh yeah.
We put those on the map in Merkley's office.
Oh,
Um,
nice. Nice.
Also, Daniel didn't mention this, and I don't think I did, but they're very interested because Nathan had been serving as a representative for Oregon, and then he moved to New
Yeah.
York and
Yeah.
had to leave the commission. And so that was great when he was serving because they had long been looking for an Oregon commissioner representative. And so there's definitely like some, hope that Daniel will apply for the Ask board.
Daniel. Ding, ding, ding,
So no
ding.
pressure or
That's
anything.
that's the plan, and I have some time,
Good. Do you
but
need letters of reference or anything?
I will tap you on the shoulder when we
Please
cross that.
do. I'm more than happy to.
Yeah, because Kyra said that they're gonna release some stuff closer to the spring, summertime is when the recruitment time is. But she also agrees that just in general, whether it's committees, and that's something that I'll talk to the rest of the commission board about, because there's like other areas where you can get involved without being a board member. But in general, she would love to see more like West Coast representation,
Mhm.
specifically like from Oregon. And so, yes, I'm gonna be applying for the board, but also like hopefully some commission members want to join some other
That would be great.
space.
Yeah.
That way we get to know each other as commissioners and we're not so siloed out here on the West Coast. People were really shocked when they're like, oh, wow, you traveled across the country. And I'm like, yeah, well,
Why do
it's,
people in Oregon like not leave the state?
yeah, we exist and we can
Yeah,
travel.
and let me tell you that flight that I took, it's only a 5-hour flight, but it kills the entire day
Oh,
because
I
of that
know.
3-hour time change.
I got to the hotel Sunday night at 1 in the morning
I believe
because
you.
I had a layover. And yeah, so it was like from 12 of like 11 in the morning till then like 1 o'clock at night. And thankfully they had like a little snack corner you could get to
Oh,
because
good.
it was so late. But yeah, that'd be really great to have some representation there again and also just have some additional ways for people to get involved. Would be
Yeah.
fantastic.
And that's a great way for especially newer folks or folks that aren't ingrained in programs and such to really like see and hear and learn what this is all about.
Mhm.
So that'd be
Yeah,
great to advocate for
awesome.
that.
Yeah,
All right. Well, good work today, friends. Happy Friday.
I'm so glad.
happy Friday.
Friday. We will see you all next Friday and we'll adjourn our meeting at 11:30 right now. So good work.
All right, thanks so
Be in
much.
touch though, Carrie or Kelly, if you need anything, just
Yeah,
give
for
a shout
sure.
out.
I'll do a midweek like check in too on just kind of the like response RSVPs that I got.
Okay, awesome.
All right, take care. Have a great weekend. It's so nice out.